What if your marriage was decided for you? David Whitman, heir to a powerful family, is forced into an arranged marriage with Anna, a woman he's never met, and one who hides behind a veil. But why won't she take it off? Is she hiding a secret? Or is there more to her than meets the eye? As their marriage unfolds, David is forced to confront his own assumptions and beliefs. Will he learn to see Anna for who she truly is, beyond the mystery? Join us on a journey of discovery, understanding, and unexpected love. The dining room of the sprawling estate glowed with soft, golden light, the crystal chandelier above casting a warm shimmer across the room. The table, grand enough to seat 20, sparkled with fine china and polished silverware, yet only 3 chairs were occupied. David slouched at one end, his posture casual but his jaw clenched with barely concealed annoyance. Across from him, his father sipped a glass of deep red wine, the epitome of calm, while his mother watched him with hawk-like intensity, her hands folded neatly on the table. Can you feel the tension in the air? This isn't happening, David snapped, shattering the heavy silence. He shoved his plate aside, the perfectly cooked steak now cold and forgotten. You can't be serious. Tell me this is a joke. David, his father said, his voice steady as a rock. No, this isn't a request. It's a decision that's already been made, done and dusted. David leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his thick, dark hair. In exasperation, oh, how generous. A decision made without even asking me? That's rich! Enough with the sarcasm, David. His mother shot back, her tone sharp enough to cut glass. This isn't just about you. It's about our family, about protecting everything we've worked so hard to build. Don't you understand that? David's eyes narrowed, his voice dripping with defiance. And the way to protect it is by marrying me off like we're stuck in the 18th century? To a woman I've never even laid eyes on? Are you kidding me? You'll meet her soon enough, his father said, setting his wine glass down with a deliberate clink. Anna is a respectable young woman from a fine family. This arrangement benefits everyone involved, trust me, David scoffed, shaking his head in disbelief. A fine family, huh? Is that why she hides behind a veil? What's she keeping secret, a scar? A double life? What's the deal? Don't be cruel, his mother snapped, her voice icy and commanding. Anna is a private person, and she has her reasons. She doesn't owe you or anyone an explanation. Show some respect. No, but apparently I owe her my entire life. David fired back, his temper flaring. Why me? Why not find some other guy who's happy to play along with this nonsense? Because you're the heir to this family, David, his father said firmly, his gaze unwavering. The Whitmans are critical to our business. This marriage isn't just a union, it's a partnership, a necessity. David let out a dry, bitter laugh. A partnership? You mean a transaction? Wow, love clearly has no place in this equation, does it? Don't be so dramatic, his mother said, her voice softening just a touch. We're not asking you to love her, David. Just respect her and fulfill your duty to this family. Is that so much to ask? David's hands clenched into fists on the table, his knuckles whitening. My duty? To marry a complete stranger? To throw away any chance of choosing my own future? That's what you call fair. You'll have everything you could ever need, his father said calmly, unfazed by the outburst, and so will she. It's a win-win. David shot to his feet, the chair scraping harshly against the polished floor. I don't need this, he growled, his voice low and seething with anger. And I sure as hell don't need her. You'll meet her tomorrow, his mother said, rising to her feet as well, her voice ringing with finality. At dinner, and I expect you to act like the man we raised you to be. David, don't let us down. David locked eyes with her, his jaw tight, but words failed him. Instead, he spun on his heel and stormed out of the dining room, the weight of their expectations crashing down on him like a suffocating wave. How could they do this to him? Upstairs in his room, David poured himself a glass of whiskey, the amber liquid glinting in the dim light. He stood by the window, staring out at the city lights twinkling in the distance, his anger burning hot and unrelenting. An arranged marriage to a woman who wouldn't even show her face? It was absurd, like something out of a dusty old novel. He downed the whiskey in one swift gulp, the fiery burn doing little to soothe his frustration. Tomorrow, he thought bitterly, tomorrow he'd meet this mysterious Anna and figure out what kind of game his parents were playing. One thing was for sure, he wasn't about to make this easy for anyone. Not a chance. The next evening, the Whitman estate hummed with quiet anticipation as the staff bustled about, preparing for the big dinner. David stepped into his parents' formal sitting room, his face a mask of neutrality, though his frustration simmered just beneath the surface. His father greeted him with a curt nod, while his mother offered a tight-lipped smile, her eyes scanning him for any sign of rebellion. "She'll be here any minute," she said, smoothing the folds of her elegant dress. "Wonderful," David muttered under his breath, tugging at the cuffs of his crisp dress shirt. "Can't wait." Moments later, the sharp click of heels on the polished hardwood floor drew their attention. David's head snapped up as a woman entered, escorted by an older man he recognized as one of the Whitman patriarchs. She moved with effortless grace, her posture straight and composed, exuding an air of quiet confidence. A long, delicate veil draped over her face, flowing down to her shoulders, revealing only her eyes strikingly sharp and an unusual shade of gray. Those eyes were bright, piercing, almost as if they could see straight through him. "Who is this woman?" "David," his mother said, stepping forward with a warm, practiced smile. "This is Anna." Anna inclined her head slightly, her voice calm and measured, like a still lake. "It's a pleasure to meet you, David." David hesitated, his gaze locked on her veil, his mind racing with questions. He extended his hand on autopilot, but his thoughts were elsewhere. "Likewise," he said, though his tone lacked any real warmth. "Really? That's all I've got?" They took their seats around the dining table, the atmosphere stiff and formal, like a scene from a period drama. David could barely focus on the small talk drifting between their parents, his attention drawn irresistibly to Anna, her stillness, her carefully chosen words, and, above all, that enigmatic veil. Why wouldn't she take it off? Halfway through dinner, his patience snapped. He set down his fork with a clink and turned to Anna, his voice low but pointed. "You don't have to keep that veil on, you know," he said, trying to sound casual. "No one's going to judge you here. Why not let us see you?" His mother shot him a glare that could freeze fire, but Anna remained unruffled, her gray eyes flicking toward him, calm and steady. "I appreciate your concern," she said softly, her voice like a gentle breeze. "But I prefer to keep it on." David raised an eyebrow, his curiosity piqued. "Why? Are you hiding something? What's the big secret?" "David," his mother hissed, her tone sharp with disapproval. "That's enough." "It's fine," Anna said, her voice never wavering, as steady as ever. She turned to David, her gaze unflinching. "I'm not hiding anything that matters. What's under the veil? It's not relevant to our arrangement." David leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms over his chest, a smirk tugging at his lips. "Arrangement? That's a fancy word for marriage, don't you think?" Anna tilted her head slightly, her tone cool and unshaken. "Isn't that what this is? An arrangement? Your parents need an alliance, and my family needs the same. Why complicate it with emotions or expectations that don't belong? Her words hit like a punch, leaving David momentarily stunned. "So that's how you see it," he said, his voice laced with sarcasm. "No love, no compassion, just a cold, hard business deal. Wow, romantic." Anna's gaze didn't waver, those gray eyes holding his without a hint of doubt. "Do you believe otherwise? Tell me, David, what do you think this is?" David opened his mouth to fire back, but no words came. A wave of frustration and confusion crashed over him. She was so calm, so composed. Didn't this whole situation bother her at all? How could she be so unaffected? "I want to know who I'm marrying," he said finally, his voice quieter, but no less firm. "Not just your name or your family. I want to know you, Anna." "Is that too much to ask?" Anna regarded him for a moment, her eyes searching his, as if weighing his sincerity. "You will, in time," she said at last. "But for now, all you need to know is that I understand my role in this union. I hope you'll understand yours. Can you do that?" Her words struck a nerve, and David felt his cheeks flush with anger. Before he could respond, Anna's father cleared his throat, breaking the tension like a crack of thunder. "Perhaps we should move on to dessert," he suggested, his tone light but firm, steering the conversation to safer waters. The rest of the evening dragged on in awkward formality, with David's parents desperately trying to smooth over the tension, while Anna remained as poised and mysterious as ever. When the night finally ended, David walked Anna and her father to the door, his mind still reeling. As Anna turned to leave, he couldn't hold back. "Why do you act like this? Doesn't matter," he asked, his voice low, almost pleading. "Doesn't it mean anything to you?" Anna paused, her hand resting on the doorframe. She turned her head slightly, her gray eyes locking onto his. "It matters," she said softly, "but not in the way you think." And with that, she stepped out into the cool night air, leaving David standing there, his frustration tangled with a spark of curiosity he couldn't ignore. What did she mean by that? The day of the wedding arrived, draped in all the grandeur and opulence you'd expect from a union between two powerful families. The venue, a sprawling estate, was adorned with fresh flowers and glittering chandeliers that cast a magical glow. Guests in designer suits and gowns milled about, their whispers and speculations filling the air. David stood at the end of the aisle, his posture rigid, his face a storm of frustration. The ceremony, though extravagant, felt hollow to him, like a stage set for a play he wanted no part in. Why did it have to be like this? When Anna entered, draped in an ornate white gown with a veil that covered her completely, the room fell silent. Her movements were graceful, her presence commanding, but that veil, still firmly in place, hid her face from the world. David's jaw tightened as she approached, the weight of every pair of eyes in the room pressing down on him. Could they feel his unease? "She still won't take it off," someone whispered behind him, their voice barely audible. "Maybe there's a reason," another voice murmured, tinged with curiosity. The ceremony unfolded with an eerie formality. Vows were exchanged, rings slipped onto fingers, and the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, his voice echoing in the grand hall. "You may kiss the bride," the officiant said, his tone warm and expectant. David froze, glancing at Anna. She inclined her head slightly, but made no move to lift her veil. With a heavy sigh, he leaned in and placed a brief, awkward kiss on the fabric covering her cheek, a gesture that felt cold and distant. Polite applause followed, but David could sense the tension in the room, the unspoken judgments swirling like a storm. What were they all thinking? The grand ballroom buzzed with the clink of champagne flutes, the swell of music, and bursts of laughter. But between David and Anna, a frosty silence hung heavy. They sat at the head table, side by side, yet it felt like an ocean separated them. David nursed his drink in silence, his eyes darting over the glittering crowd. Snippets of hushed conversations sliced through the festive air, sharp and stinging. "Why won't she show her face?" one guest murmured. "Is she hiding something?" another whispered. "Can you imagine marrying someone like that just for a business deal?" David's jaw clenched, a storm of shame and anger churning inside him. How could they talk about her like that? He stole a glance at Anna, poised and elegant, her veil still firmly in place. She seemed completely unfazed by the gossip, as if the whispers didn't even reach her. How does she stay so calm? As the evening finally wound down, David and Anna were ushered to a private suite, the door closing with a soft click that echoed in the tense air. David shrugged off his jacket, tossing it carelessly onto a chair, his frustration boiling over. He spun to face Anna, his voice sharp. "Are you seriously going to keep that veil on forever?" he demanded, pointing at the delicate fabric. "What's the deal?" Anna calmly peeled off her gloves, placing them neatly on the dresser, her movements deliberate. "Until I'm ready," she replied, her voice steady as a heartbeat. David's laugh was harsh, laced with bitterness. "Ready for what? To finally show whatever you're hiding? Or are you just enjoying this little game you're playing with me?" Anna turned to him, her piercing gray eyes meeting his through the veil's thin fabric. "This isn't a game, David," she said firmly. "I'm not hiding anything that matters. Not to you, maybe," he shot back, his voice rising. "But I'm the one standing out there, while people whisper about my wife, like she's some kind of enigma. Do you have any idea how humiliating that feels?" Anna's gaze didn't waver, steady and unflinching. "If their opinions matter more to you than I do, maybe you need to rethink what this marriage means." Her words hit like a thunderbolt, striking a nerve he hadn't expected. David's anger faltered, and he ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. "I just want the truth, Anna," he said, his voice softer but still urgent. "Why won't you let me see you? What's stopping you?" "When the time is right," she said simply, her tone as calm as ever. "And who gets to decide that?" he pressed, his frustration bubbling up again. "I do," she replied, her voice unwavering, like a lighthouse in a storm. David stared at her, his emotions twisting into a knot he couldn't unravel. Finally, he turned away, grabbing a glass of whiskey from the suite's bar. "Fine," he muttered, his voice clipped. "Keep your secrets, but don't expect me to wait around forever." He downed the drink in one gulp, the burn doing little to ease the ache in his chest. This wasn't the life he'd dreamed of. How did it come to this? Yet, deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that Anna was more than she seemed. A puzzle he was desperate to solve. Anna didn't respond, her silence filling the room like a heavy fog. She sat at the vanity, removing her earrings with slow, practiced care, each movement graceful. David retreated to the far side of the suite, the distance between them vast and unbridgeable. But in the quiet moments before sleep, as the world stilled, David found himself wondering what lay beneath that veil. Why was it so important to her? The days after their awkward wedding blurred into a haze of strained silence and polite distance. David threw himself into work, retreating to his office or taking long, aimless drives to escape the suffocating mansion. Yet, despite his efforts to avoid her, Anna's presence lingered in his mind. He couldn't help but notice the little things, the way she glided through the house, always graceful and composed, or the quiet authority she carried, like a queen in disguise. Who was this woman he'd married? One late morning, David was in the sunlit study, hunched over a pile of documents for a merger proposal that was crumbling. His frustration grew as he scanned the numbers again and again, the deal teetering on the edge of disaster. Why won't this work? Need some help. David's head snapped up, startled to see Anna standing in the doorway, her simple dress flowing gracefully over her frame, the veil still obscuring her face. "I didn't hear you come in," he said, his tone sharp. "This isn't exactly your expertise, is it?" Anna tilted her head slightly, her voice calm and confident. "You might be surprised." Before he could object, she stepped closer, her presence quiet but commanding, like a soft breeze that demands attention. She picked up a document, her gloved fingers skimming the text with purpose. "It's not the numbers," she said after a moment, her voice sure. "It's this clause, too vague. It's making the other party nervous." David frowned, leaning over to see where she pointed. "You think that's the problem?" "I don't think," she said simply, a hint of a smile in her voice. "I know. Tighten the language, make the terms crystal clear, and they'll sign." David stared at her, stunned. "How do you even know that? Who is she?" Anna set the paper down, her posture relaxed yet confident. "I may not be part of your world, David, but that doesn't mean I'm clueless about how it works." With that, she turned and glided out of the room, leaving him to grapple with her words, their weight sinking deep into his mind. A few days later, David stumbled upon Anna in another unexpected moment. He was cutting through the garden on his way to the garage when laughter spilled from the kitchen. Curious, he paused at the open door and peered inside. Anna stood by the counter, her veil in place, chatting warmly with the kitchen staff. Her voice was bright and engaging, and the employees glowed with delight in her presence. "How does she do that? You've outdone yourself with these pastries." "Mrs. Hale," Anna said, her tone brimming with sincerity. "They're almost too gorgeous to eat." Mrs. Hale, the head cook, beamed with pride. "Oh, you're too kind, Mrs. Whitman." "But it's true, isn't it?" Anna laughed softly, her hands clasped in front of her. "You've been perfecting that recipe for weeks, haven't you? If you ever need a taste tester, you know where to find me," Anna added, her warmth infectious. David watched, captivated, as the staff responded to Anna with genuine affection, their faces relaxed and open, despite the veil. She had a gift for making people feel seen, valued a talent he hadn't expected. As he turned to leave, her image lingered in his mind, her warmth and poise clashing with the distant, mysterious figure he'd painted her as. Could he have been wrong about her? Over the next few weeks, David found himself watching Anna more closely, though he'd never admit it out loud. He noticed her quiet dignity, the thoughtful ways she contributed to the household, and the sharp intelligence that shone in their rare conversations. One evening at dinner, she caught him off guard with a question that hit right at the heart of his world. "How's the merger going?" she asked, her voice steady but curious. David hesitated, torn between brushing her off and opening up. Finally, he set down his fork with a sigh. "It's a mess. The other parties still dragging their feet. Even after all our changes." Anna nodded thoughtfully, her gray eyes gleaming with insight. "Maybe they need a little reassurance. Have you thought about hosting a meeting here? Sometimes seeing the faces behind the deal makes all the difference." David blinked, caught off guard by the idea. "You think that'd actually work? It's worth a shot," she said simply, a spark of confidence in her tone. To his shock, David took her advice, and the meeting was a triumph. The deal closed soon after, leaving him relieved but reeling. How did she know? As weeks passed, David began to question everything he'd assumed about Anna. She wasn't the cold, detached figure he'd imagined. Beneath that veil was a woman of brilliance, kindness, and depth. A woman who moved through the world with a quiet strength he hadn't anticipated. Yet the veil remained, a constant reminder of the gap between them. One night, alone in his study, David stared out the window, his thoughts consumed by Anna. She was nothing like he'd expected, but there was still so much he didn't understand. Was the problem her secrecy, or his own inability to see her clearly? The tension between them had been simmering for weeks, an unspoken weight that grew heavier with each passing day. One evening, as the sun sank below the horizon, casting long shadows across the mansion, David couldn't hold back any longer. He found Anna in the library, where she often retreated with a book. She sat by the window, the soft glow of a lamp illuminating her veiled face, her gray eyes calm but alert as she looked up. "Anna," David said, his tone sharper than he meant. "Yes?" she replied, her voice steady. "We need to talk," he said, stepping closer, his heart pounding. Anna closed her book and set it aside. "About what?" David hesitated, his frustration spilling over. "Why do you keep hiding behind that veil? Do you think I'm too shallow to handle whatever you're afraid to show? What's it going to take?" Anna's gaze held steady, but a flicker of emotion danced in her eyes. "This isn't about you, David," she said quietly, her voice carrying a weight that stopped him cold. "Then what is it about?" David demanded, his voice rising with a mix of frustration and desperation. "Because from where I'm standing, it feels like some kind of test. Are you just seeing how long I'll put up with being married to a mystery?" Anna rose from her chair, her movements slow and deliberate, like she was holding back a storm. She turned away, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, fingers twisting together. "It's not a test, David," she said softly, her voice trembling just enough to hint at the emotion beneath. "Then why?" he pressed, stepping closer, his heart pounding. "Why won't you let me see you? Do you think I'm too immature to handle the truth? Or is it that you don't trust me at all?" Anna's shoulders stiffened, and for a fleeting moment, David thought she might slip out of the room without a word. But when she turned to face him, her gray eyes blazed with a quiet intensity that stopped him in his tracks. "Do you really want to know why, David?" she asked, her voice steady but edged with a sharpness he'd never heard before. "Yes," he said firmly, his gaze locked on hers. "Tell me." "Because I wanted you to see me for who I am," she said, her tone unwavering, each word landing like a stone. "Not for what I look like or what people whisper about me, but for the person I am beneath it all. I hoped, prayed that you'd be willing to look past the surface. Was I wrong to hope for that?" Her words hit him like a punch to the chest, their weight sinking deep into his heart. Anna's voice softened, but the pain lingered. "But it seems I was mistaken. All this time, you've been obsessed with what you can't see, ignoring what's right in front of you. Haven't you?" David opened his mouth to argue, but no words came. For the first time, he saw how shallow he'd been, how judgmental. He'd poured so much energy into resenting that veil, convincing himself it was a wall between them, that he'd missed the depth of the woman standing before him. "How could I have been so blind?" "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice barely audible, heavy with regret. Anna's expression softened, though a trace of sadness lingered in her eyes. "I don't want an apology, David," she said gently. "I'm asking for patience, for understanding. Can you give me that?" David nodded, his throat tight with emotion. "I've been such a fool," he admitted, his voice raw. "I judged you for something I didn't even try to understand. And I made this all about me, when it was never about me. How could I get it so wrong?" Anna's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile, like a flicker of light in the dark. "We all have our blind spots," she said softly. "The question is, are we willing to see beyond them? Are you, David?" For the first time, David felt a spark of hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, they could find a way forward together. "I want to try," he said earnestly, his eyes searching hers. "I want to really see you, not just what's under the veil, but everything you are. Will you let me?" Anna studied him for a moment, her gray eyes probing for sincerity. Then she nodded, her voice soft but resolute. "Then we'll start there." As she turned back to her chair and picked up her book, a sense of calm washed over David, like a storm finally breaking. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, he felt ready to walk it, not as a man hung up on appearances, but as someone eager to understand the woman he'd married. The veil still hung between them, but David realized it didn't define her. It was just one piece of a much bigger story, a story he was finally ready to discover. Could this be the beginning of something real? Over the next few weeks, David threw himself into changing. Anna's words echoed in his mind, urging him to approach their marriage with patience and genuine curiosity. One morning over breakfast, he decided to take the first step, his heart racing with nervous determination. "Anna," he began, setting his coffee cup down with a clink, "I've been thinking about what you said about seeing who you really are." Anna looked up from her plate, her gray eyes meeting his through the veil, calm but curious. "I'd love for you to be more involved in the business," he said, his tone earnest, almost pleading. "You've got a sharp mind, and I could really use your perspective on some projects, if you're up for it. That is, what do you say?" Anna regarded him quietly, as if searching for any hint of insincerity. Finally, she nodded, a small smile in her voice. "I'd be happy to help." David felt a wave of relief, though he kept his face composed. "Awesome. There's a meeting this afternoon about the Whitman merger. I think your insights could make a huge difference. You in..." That afternoon, Anna joined David in the conference room, her presence drawing surprised glances from the executives. Their curiosity was palpable, but none dared mention her veil. As the discussion heated up, Anna listened intently, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her stillness commanding attention. When David turned to her for input, she spoke with a clarity that silenced the room. "It's not just about profit margins," she said, her voice calm but authoritative, like a beacon cutting through fog. "It's about sustainability. If you want this partnership to last, you've got to show the Whitmans you're invested in their long-term success, not just your own bottom line." The room went quiet, everyone absorbing her words. David watched as the executives nodded, clearly impressed. Later, as they walked back to his office, he turned to Anna, a grin breaking through. "You were incredible in there. Did you see their faces?" Anna tilted her head slightly, her tone modest. "I was just being honest. Sometimes that's exactly what people need," David replied, his voice warm with admiration. As time passed, David found himself turning to Anna more and more. She had a knack for slicing through complexity, whether it was a tricky business deal or a personal dilemma. One evening, as they pored over a proposal in the study, David paused to watch her, her gloved fingers skimming the pages, as she jotted notes with precision. "You're really good at this," he said, breaking the silence, his voice tinged with awe. Anna glanced up, her eyes softening. "I've had some great teachers," she said, a hint of playfulness in her tone. David smiled, realizing her humility was yet another layer to the woman he was beginning to know. Their partnership grew beyond the office. He started noticing Anna's quiet kindness, how she brightened the household staff's day with a kind word, or how she'd leave a steaming cup of tea on his desk during late-night work sessions, or suggest books she thought he'd love. Who was this woman who cared so deeply? In return, David made an effort to show his appreciation. He asked about her day, included her in decisions, and let her know her presence mattered. One evening, as they sat in the garden, the air filled with the scent of blooming flowers, David turned to Anna, his voice tentative. "I've been meaning to ask, why did you agree to marry me? You didn't have to. What made you say yes?" Anna was quiet, her gaze fixed on the flowers swaying in the breeze. "Because I saw potential in you," she said finally, her voice soft but sure. "I saw someone who could be more than they even realized. Isn't that worth believing in?" David's throat tightened, emotions swelling in his chest. "And have I lived up to that?" he asked, almost afraid of the answer. Anna's eyes met his, a warmth in her expression. "You're getting there," she said, a smile in her voice. Despite their progress, the veil remained a quiet reminder of the distance still between them. One night, by the flickering fireplace, David gathered his courage. "Anna," he began carefully, "I don't want to push, but do you think you'll ever take the veil off? Will I ever see you?" Anna didn't look away, her voice steady. "When the time is right," David nodded, a flicker of disappointment tugging at him. "I get it. I just want you to know I'm here, whenever you're ready." "Okay." For the first time, Anna reached out, her hand resting gently on his. "Thank you," she said softly, her touch warm and grounding. In that moment, David realized the veil wasn't the barrier he'd once thought. It was just part of her story, one she'd share when she was ready. And until then, he'd wait, trusting their growing bond was worth every moment. Could patience really lead to something deeper? The grand ballroom of the Whitman estate pulsed with music, laughter, and the clink of glasses, chandeliers, casting a golden glow over the elegant crowd. David had pulled out all the stops for the gala, celebrating the Whitman merger's success and his empire's bright future. He stood near the stage, chatting with investors, but his thoughts kept drifting to Anna. He glanced at the grand staircase every few minutes, wondering would she show. She'd been so quiet about her plans, and her absence was stirring whispers among the guests. "Your wife isn't joining us tonight?" an investor asked, polite but curious. "She'll be here," David said, though doubt gnawed at him. Then, the hum of conversation faded as all eyes turned to the staircase. David's breath caught as Anna appeared at the top, a vision in a flowing emerald gown that shimmered like starlight. But it wasn't the gown that stole the crowd's breath, it was her face, unveiled for the first time, revealing high cheekbones, luminous skin, and those wise gray eyes. David stood frozen, his heart racing. Who was this breathtaking woman? "She's absolutely stunning," a guest whispered, awe rippling through the crowd. "Why would she hide a face like that?" another murmured, their curiosity palpable. Anna reached the bottom of the grand staircase, pausing as her gray eyes scanned the room, finally locking onto David. A faint, knowing smile curved her lips as she glided toward him, the sea of guests parting effortlessly to let her through. David's heart pounded in his chest. How could she be so breathtaking? When she reached him, he found his voice, though it came out softer than he meant, almost a whisper. "Anna, why now? Why tonight?" Anna met his gaze, her expression calm but resolute, like a lighthouse standing firm against a storm. "Because it was time," she said simply, her voice carrying a quiet strength that silenced his racing thoughts. She turned to face the hushed room, her voice rising with a clarity that filled the ballroom. "I know you've all wondered why I've kept my face hidden," she began, her tone steady but laced with raw emotion. "Some of you probably thought the worst, that I was hiding a scar, a deformity, or something shameful. But the truth? It's so much simpler than that." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the sea of faces, each one hanging on her words. "I wore the veil because I wanted to be seen for who I am, not for my looks, but for my thoughts, my values, my actions. Too often, we judge people by appearances, and I refuse to let that define me or my marriage. Don't we all deserve to be seen for who we truly are?" Her words hung in the air, the crowd spellbound by her honesty. Anna turned back to David, her voice softening. almost trembling with vulnerability. "I kept the veil because I needed to know if you could see beyond it, if you could see me." "David, was that too much to hope for?" David's chest tightened, her words slicing through every doubt and frustration he'd ever felt. He stepped closer, his voice low but thick with emotion. "I see you, Anna. I think I always have. I was just too stubborn to realize it. Until now, how could I have missed it?" The world seemed to fade away as he spoke, his focus entirely on her. "I was so caught up in what I couldn't see that I ignored what was right in front of me. Your kindness, your brilliance, your strength. That's what I've fallen in love with. Anna, that's what makes you, you." Anna's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but her smile held steady, radiant, and unshaken. "And I've fallen in love with the man who's willing to grow, to learn, to look beyond his own assumptions." "You've surprised me, David, in the best way." David reached out, taking her hands in his, their warmth grounding him. "Anna, I don't give a damn what anyone else thinks. I care about you, and I'm grateful every single day that you're my wife. How did I get so lucky?" The crowd erupted into applause, a few joyful cheers breaking through as the guests celebrated the raw, beautiful moment. Anna and David stood together, their connection electric, their shared smile saying more than words ever could. For the rest of the evening, Anna moved through the room with a newfound confidence, charming every guest she spoke to with her wit and warmth. David stayed close, introducing her to those who hadn't yet met her, his chest swelling with pride as she captivated the room. Could she be any more incredible? By the night's end, it was clear to everyone that Anna wasn't just the stunning woman who'd unveiled herself. She was a force, a partner who commanded admiration and respect. As the last guests drifted away and the ballroom grew quiet, David and Anna slipped onto the balcony overlooking the estate. The night air was crisp, and the stars twinkled like diamonds above them. David turned to Anna, his voice heavy with sincerity. "I'm so sorry it took me so long to understand. Anna, you deserved better from me. Why didn't I see it sooner?" Anna smiled, leaning into his side, her warmth chasing away the chill. "We all grow at our own pace, David. What matters is that we're here now, together. Isn't that enough?" He wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close, his heart full. "I don't care what comes next, as long as we face it side by side. Deal?" Anna tilted her head to look at him, her gray eyes sparkling under the starlight. "Together," she agreed, her voice brimming with promise. As they stood there, gazing out at the horizon, David realized their journey, filled with misunderstandings, challenges, and revelations, had led them to this perfect moment. For the first time, he felt certain their future was as bright and limitless as the stars above. Could life get any better than this? In the weeks after the gala, David and Anna settled into a new rhythm, their relationship blossoming in ways neither had dared to dream. The veil was gone, but its absence was just a small part of the profound shift between them. David no longer saw Anna as a puzzle to solve or a duty to fulfill. She was his partner, his equal, someone who challenged him, lifted him up, and made him better every day. And Anna, in turn, opened up completely, sharing her sharp mind, her playful humor, and the vulnerability she'd once guarded so fiercely. How had he ever lived without her? Their mornings often began with coffee in the sunlit breakfast nook, chatting about everything from daily plans to big dreams for the future. David cherished these moments, not just for Anna's practical insights, but for the quiet intimacy that wrapped around them like a warm blanket. At work, Anna's influence grew undeniable. David brought her into key decisions, and her thoughtful perspective won over his team. She wasn't just a bystander, she dove in, offering solutions that blended innovation with practicality. Who knew she could be such a powerhouse? One afternoon, during a high-stakes meeting about a new project, David introduced Anna to the boardroom with a grin. "Before we dive in," he said, "I want to introduce someone who's been a game changer, not just in my life, but for this company, my wife, Anna." The room broke into polite applause as Anna stood, poised yet humble. "She has a gift for spotting what others miss," David continued, his voice brimming with pride. "Her insights have already made a huge impact, and I can't wait for you all to work with her. She's incredible." Anna flashed a gracious smile. "Thank you, David. I'm honored to contribute and excited to collaborate with everyone here." As the meeting unfolded, Anna proved she was no figurehead. She spoke with confidence and clarity, her ideas sparking lively debates and earning nods from even the toughest critics. Outside of work, David and Anna explored their shared passions, strolling through art galleries, attending charity galas, and traveling to places that sparked their imaginations. Through these moments, they uncovered a deep compatibility that went far beyond their arranged start. Could they be more perfect for each other? One evening, as they wandered hand in hand through a vibrant street market abroad, David turned to Anna with a soft smile. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" he asked, his voice full of wonder. Anna chuckled, her eyes dancing. "Every day, especially when I remember how much you despised that veil." David laughed, a sheepish grin spreading across his face. "Guilty as charged, but I'm grateful for it now. It taught me to see you, not just your face, but everything that makes you so. You." Anna squeezed his hand, her voice warm and heartfelt. "And I'm grateful you were willing to learn. That's what makes you special, David." Months stretched into years, and their bond only deepened. Together, they built a life that wove their strengths and values into a seamless tapestry, not just a thriving business partnership, but a loving, supportive marriage. David often marveled at how much Anna had taught him about patience, humility, and looking beyond the surface. Anna, in turn, admired David's growth, his willingness to admit mistakes, and his steadfast devotion to their future. How did they get so lucky? The final scene played out in the Whitman Enterprises boardroom, where David and Anna sat side by side at the head of the table, ready to chart the company's next big venture. David opened the meeting, pausing to glance at Anna with a smile that lit up his face. "Before we start," he said, "I want to give a shout out to my wife, Anna. Her vision has shaped this project, and I couldn't ask for a better partner in business and in life. She's my rock." Anna met his gaze, her smile soft but confident. "Thank you, David. And I couldn't ask for a better teammate." The room hummed with quiet approval as the meeting kicked off. Later, as they stepped out of the building, the city skyline glowing in the distance, David turned to Anna. "I never imagined we'd end up here," he admitted, his voice tinged with awe. Anna tilted her head, her eyes twinkling with humor. "Neither did I, but we did pretty darn well, don't you think?" David laughed, pulling her close. "Better than I ever dreamed." As they stood together, their future stretching out before them, David knew their life wasn't just a product of chance. It was a testament to understanding, respect, and a love that grew from the truths they'd uncovered together. In that moment, he was certain they were exactly where they belonged together. What could be more perfect? David and Anna's journey proves love isn't about appearances. It's about seeing, understanding, and cherishing the person beneath. From an arranged marriage to a beautiful partnership built on trust and growth, their story reminds us that the greatest treasures lie beyond the surface. If this tale warmed your heart, share it with someone who needs a spark of inspiration. And for more stories of love and transformation, subscribe to Soul Stirring Stories. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time with another tale to lift your soul.